Please welcome partner at Holland and Knight, Aspen Institute Latinos in Society Advisory Board member, Francisco Sanchez.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you'll agree, I'm pretty sure you'll agree that we have had an outstanding summit to date. Yeah, you can give it a round of applause. And I can tell you that the panel that you're about to have in front of you is no exception. As the former Undersecretary of Commerce under the Obama administration, we were tireless in our efforts to promote and protect competitiveness of American business globally. Domestically, I can tell you that public and private procurement are one of the most effective ways to empower women and minority-owned businesses so that they can scale. They can integrate into global supply chains, creating quality jobs and building community wealth. I can tell you, though, that the process to apply for these opportunities is too often legalistic and burdensome, with real systematic barriers impeding diverse entrepreneurs from securing and fulfilling contracts, accessing the much-needed capital to scale these operations. So our next panelists are going to discuss innovative models that can be used in a deliberate and coordinating way to broker and process and connect minority-owned businesses to public and private procurement opportunities. And to make this happen this afternoon, we've got an amazing moderator, a friend and someone that I've had the great pleasure and honor of collaborating with for many years. Our moderator for this session is Bruce Katz. He's the founding director of the Norwalk Metro Finance Lab at Drexel University. He's a renowned urbanist and a special advisor to the Aspen City Action Lab. So ladies and gentlemen, please offer a warm welcome to our moderator, Bruce Katz.
Thanks, Francisco. And what I want to do is introduce someone who really needs no introduction, and that's Congressman Joaquin Castro. He has represented the 20th Congressional District in the state of Texas since 2013. Before then, he was in the State House in Texas. The panel that we're about to have today is all his fault, to tell you the truth, because what Congressman Castro realized as the Congress was deliberating the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act is that the federal government, through all this spending that we've talked about as this day has progressed, has the opportunity to be a vehicle for the growth in Latino firms and other firms led by people of color. That is going, as Francisco said, it's going to take some work to do, because these supplier diversity systems, as they're called, are not fully functional in many places. But as we'll talk about, he has catalyzed an effort in San Antonio with a plethora of public authorities and agencies, city government and county government, to make federal spending be this vehicle for business building. So with that, I will turn it to Congressman Castro.
Well, thank you, Bruce. Thank you for that introduction, and great to see everybody, if by Zoom, not in person. Sorry that I can't be with y'all today. I'm Congressman Joaquin Castro, and I proudly represent my hometown of San Antonio, Texas, in the U.S. House of Representatives. I want to thank Bruce for all of his work, and of course, thank Dominica Lynch, the Aspen Institute Latino Society Program, and all those who played a role in making today's summit possible and who helped convene us on this issue. I also want to recognize a few friends of mine from San Antonio who are in the room, I believe. My great friend, Secretary Henry Cisneros, Lift Fund President and CEO Janie Barrera, and at least a few local San Antonio leaders who've shown great dedication to preventing displacement and promoting equitable economic growth in my hometown. Over the last several years, as you all know, Latino entrepreneurs have started businesses at the fastest rate of any ethnic group in the United States. Our businesses create jobs and build wealth, and they contribute more than $800 billion to the economy annually. But despite their success, the data is clear that Latino-owned businesses are not receiving an equitable level of support from local governments and federal agencies. During the last year of the Trump administration, just 12% of Black and Latino business owners who applied, for example, for the Paycheck Protection Program received the loans they requested. Without the funding to stay afloat, thousands of minority-owned businesses were forced to close their doors and let their workers go during the pandemic. Last year, when Democrats passed the American Rescue Plan, one of our big priorities was to overhaul the Paycheck Protection Program to direct more support to the businesses that needed it most. After a new round of funding became available in the spring of 2021, more Latino and Latina entrepreneurs received the money they needed to rebuild. But as we look ahead to the future, we need to make sure that all small business programs are designed to include Latinos from the very beginning. And over the next decade, the American Rescue Plan, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act will direct hundreds of billions of dollars to fund a vast array of local development and infrastructure projects. These projects represent huge opportunities for contractors, but unless cities get serious about changing their procurement structures, I'm concerned that Latino-owned businesses will not get an equitable slice of the contracting pie, or even oftentimes a fair opportunity. This is a national problem, of course, but I'll use my city of San Antonio as a case study. Last year, I conducted an audit of how well San Antonio's public entities were doing when it comes to awarding public contracts to women and minority-owned businesses. When the numbers came back, I was taken aback by how bad they were. San Antonio, just for context, is 64% Latino, and more than 75% of the city is non-white. But even in a city where most of our local leaders are people of color, it was hard to find a public entity that awarded even 20% of its contracts to women or minority-owned businesses. At the federal level, as you know, the numbers aren't much better. And as Latinos make up a larger and larger share of the population, our tax dollars are essentially subsidizing our own exclusion, and no community should be asked to do that. It should go without saying, but Latino underrepresentation in contracting doesn't come from any lack of capability or potential or drive on the part of Latino entrepreneurs. At all levels of government, the contracting process can be expensive, cumbersome, and designed to favor firms that have historically held government contracts before. The good news is that with the leadership of folks in this room, a new model for diverse contracting is in development now. Over the summer, I convened the first in a series of meetings among researchers from Drexel University, led by Bruce Katz, staff from the Aspen Institute, including Dominica and her team, and the heads of public entities in San Antonio, as well as local leaders from the community. For the last several months, these three groups have been collaborating on a procurement playbook that addresses challenges with diverse contracting and provides local authorities with a roadmap for inclusive growth. The Supply SA playbook is set to be unveiled at the end of this year, and I'm looking forward to working with Aspen and Drexel to implement their recommendations in San Antonio and in cities across the country. In other words, I don't want for us to just develop a playbook that's going to sit on the shelf somewhere. The second and very important part of this plan is executing on that playbook. Every year, state and municipal governments spend more than $1 trillion on outside contracting. If these entities make a sustained effort to invest in diverse suppliers, they can transform the economic outlook for minority-owned businesses and the communities they support. I look forward to continuing this incredible work with all of you as we work to improve economic opportunities for Latinos within public contracting and in every sector of our economy. And please, if you have ideas about how the federal government can make a greater difference in this space, please reach out to me and to my office. Thank you. Great to be with you.
So that is the perfect sort of platform and start to this panel. So let me bring out the panelists. Fernando Hernandez is Senior Director of Supplier Diversity at the Coca-Cola Company. Lisa Martinez is the founder and CEO of LM Genuine Solutions, the lead facilitator for the South Florida Anchor Alliance, supported by the Health Foundation of South Florida. Ramiro Cavazos doesn't need any introduction in this room, from the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and then Jane Gonzalez, who's the owner of MedWheels from the great state of San Antonio. See, I've elevated you already. So let me just build precisely on what the congressman was saying, because what he's really describing is a very large procurement economy in the United States. The federal government is the largest purchaser of goods and services in the world, about $665 billion a year. And then all this spending that we're talking about, infrastructure and innovation and climate, is flowing through a very complex set of state and local authorities and agencies and universities, hospitals, et cetera. And then we have the universities themselves and the healthcare system and large corporations and utilities and so forth. So this is a procurement economy. It is in the trillions. It's a very large portion of the broader US economy. The question or the challenge then is, can we use this support for business to grow Latino businesses and other businesses owned by minority groups in the United States, businesses of scale? The current system is very fragmented. As Francisco said, it is very legalistic. It is focused on compliance more than market making or business building. And as we've worked with Congressman Castro and Dominica and her team, just looking at San Antonio, and this is just reflective of the whole country, you'll have a dozen or two separate authority, agency, local government, county government, school districts, et cetera. So it's a very fragmented system. Everyone is sort of doing their own thing. So there's a bit of work to do here in structural reform, but the potential is there. And Ramiro, so I wanted to start with you, because you really sit at, you've been the head of the San Antonio Chamber, but now you're the head of the National Chamber. How do you think about this federal spending moment or the procurement economy writ large as a vehicle for growing Latino-owned business? Challenges and opportunities.
Well, Bruce, you said it so well, as did Congressman Castro. The US government is the largest buying service in the world, and we all pay taxes into it. Some of us pay more than our fair share. Some don't pay taxes. It's a bad economic cycle if you take those 600 plus billion dollars in purchases and you don't redistribute those dollars back to your investors in the way of dividends. And part of the cycle of this investment actually creates a negative draw on US government itself. I mean, so you have, what we're trying to do, the common thread in everything that we are trying to do is create wealth in our communities. This is the free enterprise system. It's the best system that we have to raise quality of life. We have 5 million Latino-owned businesses and Latino-owned businesses ready to do business, ready to scale. All they want is more business. But as my dad had a saying in Spanish, no queremos que nos den, queremos que nos pongan donde hay. And so we don't want anybody to give us anything. We want to be in the center of where the action's at. And I just want to commend this conversation. I want to commend Aspen, Dominica, Bruce, you, and of course, Chairman Vasquez, Ambassador Vasquez. But I want to call out Henry Cisneros. He was mayor when I worked at the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber in the late 80s. And we did our own audit, and less than 2% of the city's purchases were going to Latino-owned businesses, and Henry was the mayor at the time. But it revealed in the city that Congressman Castro described that we could do better. And so Mayor Cisneros passed an ordinance. We put a new small business ordinance in place, and we had goals, and we had people who were champions on the council. I'll never forget, one of the council members said, "You'll never pass this at all," and we got a 10-to-1 vote, thankfully. But it couldn't have happened without Henry Cisneros as a champion to say, let us raise those numbers, but do it fairly and competitively. And so we just wanted an opportunity at that public pie to take a bite out of that pie. And I'm glad to say some of them are here with us today. There are many small business owners that have benefited through that, but it's open competition. We just want our fair share, and it's the largest buying service in the world. And it's a bad economic cycle if we don't put that money back into, at the federal, state, and local level, to our small business owners, our women-owned, minority-owned businesses. It's a bad formula for economic success, and we're leaving trillions of dollars off the table.
So 2 quick things. My 8th grade Spanish is coming back slowly. The second thing is, as some folks in the room know, I was chief of staff to Henry Cisneros when he was the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. That was the height of my professional career. It's been downhill ever since. But Fernando, let me turn to you, because we're talking about public sector spending here, flowing either directly from the national government or through states and locals, authorities, agencies. Coca-Cola has been seen as one of the private corporations that has one of the most active supplier diversity programs in the United States and beyond. What does Coca-Cola do that could inform the public sector?
First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for being here and for your kind attention. I want to thank my fellow panelists and colleagues. Ramiro, thank you for setting the tone. I think it's the correct tone. It's about intentionality. It's around focus. Yeah. It's around understanding the basic economics and the building blocks of it, whether it's public or private. This is a business issue. If I'm a business person, I look at it very, very logistically. I break it down. I say to myself, we want to be intentional about having Latinos participate in this ecosystem, right? So you have to be intentional in any business model. You have to set goals and objectives. You have to hold yourself to it, and you have to measure it. What gets measured gets done. What does not, doesn't. And you have to flow those things down. This is not rocket science. This is the basics. I can tell you, on the private side of the house, I've led 3 programs, thank God successfully. The AT&T program into the $1 billion roundtable, that means you consistently do over $1 billion. And we grew it. Today they're doing over $50 billion in the tenure from when I started the program. So I think it was a good start. From the point of view of Microsoft that left AT&T, went to Microsoft, took the program over at a couple $100 million a year. By the time we were done, we were doing $5.2 billion each year, and about another $400 to $500 million on tier 2. Now I'm here at Coca-Cola. I've been here about a year and a half, close to 2 years, and they recruited me specifically to execute on a world-class program. I have 3 objectives: to get the program to $1 billion in spend consistently year in, year out, and then grow it from there. Make good on the commitment we made on the African American spend, which was $500 million, and to take the program globally. So everyone has to have skin in the game. Whether it's public sector or private, at whatever level, I respect it. But as we did with the example that Ramiro looked at with Mr. Cisneros, if you're at X%, in this case 2%, what is reasonable that you can get to? And what are the benchmarks? What are the heuristics, right? Mm-hmm. Let's do it in a logical way from your studies and say, what is world-class? I can tell you, world-class programs, at least from our side of the house, on the private side, world-class is between 10 and 12%. That's what gets you into the BDR, right? Mm-hmm. So we have the heuristics. It's holding ourselves accountable to that 10 or 12%. Now the flip side is I ran multicultural marketing at AT&T for 10 years. So I know how to make billions of dollars from this market. Guess what? We over-index in many categories, including at Coca-Cola. So it makes good business sense. Again, back to my colleague. It makes good business sense to put money in your pocket because you're the ones that are putting money in our pocket. So look at symbiotic relationships and feed them. And that's what I have to say. But I think we're all now taking it into a space that we're being very intentional.
This is excellent. Lisa, could you describe what the Anchor Alliance is? Because you do have public sector entities in it, but you also have some of the bigger nonprofit, civic, eds, meds, et cetera. So when was it formed? What's the purpose or the intentionality?
Right.
Where are you today?
Yeah, I will tell you, listening to my fellow panelists, it's not rocket science. We need to be able to make sure that there's policies that kind of drive the point home in regards to action. And so what the South Florida Anchor Alliance, where it started, it was with the Health Foundation of South Florida. They are a grant-making entity that invests in the community to establish healthy communities, and being able to understand that healthy communities emerge based upon individual wealth building. And then with that, the idea of being able to determine how the biggest contracting entities across our two counties, Miami-Dade and Broward County, how they could be able to be part of the solution. And quite candidly, policies have been in place for many years, and being able to have specific goals for creating supplier diversity programs. And in being able to understand how that can actually realize opportunities, we often have frustrated small and minority-owned businesses that cannot break the formula to be able to get a contract with one entity, let alone across various different types of anchor institutions across our two counties. And so with that being said, the Health Foundation of South Florida wanted to bring these entities together and to be able to determine how they could co-develop a blueprint that would speak to a community goal of greater investments and greater contracting opportunities for small and minority communities across our two counties. A blueprint that addresses not only common policies, common accountability metrics, speaking about a unified platform for easy access to small and minority-owned businesses that can be able to not only see all the opportunities across anchor members, but also be able to be assessed based upon their needs and be able to be given opportunities for capacity building to scaffold the opportunities through subcontracting and smaller prime contracting opportunities. Now, it is not easy because collaboration is not easy. And when we're talking about hospitals, when we're talking about universities, school districts, county governments, and cities, this is we're up to 23 anchor institutions across two counties that have decided to work together and are unifying themselves to launch a South Florida Anchor Alliance regional marketplace. But then we also, so what we're doing is we're building the infrastructure pieces to be able to empower collaboration, and then we're on the verge of implementation. And then it's where the rubber meets the road in ensuring that once we establish what accountability will look like, can we collectively deliver informed by the small businesses and minority-owned businesses and Latino businesses, obviously, within our community.
So Jane, I want to come to you, and then we're going to sort of mix it up here then with the audience as well. In many ways, you're the focus of this conversation, right? Because I know, there's a lot of burden here. Because we want you to grow. So describe your company, describe the kind of interaction you've had with the public sector in the past, and where things stand today.
Thank you, everybody. It's such an honor for me to be here. I want to thank Dominica and everyone, because it's really important to have a small business at the table. And oftentimes, when I go to many events, many functions, there's a lot of conversations regarding small business, but we're not at the table. So thank you, it matters. And so my name is Jane Gonzalez. I was born and raised in San Antonio. I'm the first one to graduate from college. I have a master's degree in finance, a bachelor's in accounting, and I am a cancer survivor. And so for all of the small companies, imagine what we've gone through. We went through COVID. We now have inflation. Interest rates are going through the roof. Rent's going through the roof. Cost of materials is going through the roof. We have supply chain disruptions. All of this is hitting us like a milestone. So I want to start out by saying, si se puede, con ganas. It has to be with ganas. And so my company, we've been in business 17 years. I am located on the east side of San Antonio. It's a minority, historically underutilized business. It's economically challenged. In the news, there's killings, there's murder, there's all kinds of crime. I chose to be there. Just like Cecilia from Azteca, just like Jenny Gonzalez from Webhead. We've got companies that choose to be in these very economically challenged neighborhoods, because it's not just about running the business. We want to have an impact on the community. It matters to us. And so we are the first company in San Antonio to win a major medical supply contract. It's the defibrillator contract. And we did it well, 5 years with COVID, with my illness, the supply chain disruptions, successful. It's up for renewal, and now they want to solicit it low bid. And we are buying the materials 90 days in advance. We are warehousing the inventory inside of my warehouse. I buy it 90 days. We store it in case there's an emergency, medical supplies, defibrillators, that's pretty important. And so that's the value add, right? So the question always becomes, all small companies in our communities, every single one of us creates value. Are we honoring that value? And if the question is no, how can we then value that company in that community more? So what I'm saying is that I'm creating value, right? So the city wants to do a low bid. The community came back and said, no, don't do it as a low bid. Do it as the best value. And the councilman, when we said, do it at best value, he said, no, I can go buy this at Office Depot. It's low bid. So that right there is the elephant in the room, right? We need to educate, because my business, I'm paying property taxes 2 times. I pay property taxes with my business, and I pay it with my residents. And we do that with the escalation of it, water, electric, rent. Everything is going through the roof. Our cost of insurance is going through the roof, but yet we want, the agencies want to contract with us low bid. How in the world do we reconcile that? So my solution is that cooperative contracts are vehicles that we can litigate that, right? Because my company represents something that's called Second Stage. It's a teenage company. So I was really encouraged earlier that we had a conversation separating, I call them the babies, the micros, the startups. Their needs are really different, right? You need certifications, you need business planning, you need all these kinds of things. A teenage company like mine, I'm beyond that. I've already got I have $1 million contract over 5 years, and I've proven that I can do this. It's a second stage company. So what I would propose is that we invest through the Edward Lowe Foundation, bring in a pilot program, only being deliberate. We're not deliberate. See, that's the issue that we have. We just kind of do this. We have to be deliberate. 10 companies, take them through the program, line them up with SATX, where we're doing all the recruiting of all these major companies, do mentor proteges, then create an asset list that says, here's the credentials of companies that are ready to provide whatever is needed inside of San Antonio, and now you have an inventory, right? So I'm really excited. Sí se puede, pero se puede con ganas.
So just to build on what you're saying and then to open it up for everyone, this system really needs to be radically disrupted, right? I mean, supplier diversity has been around since Richard Nixon. We don't talk about Richard Nixon much, but anyway. Right, so it's been around a long time.
76.
And we've seen really incremental changes in either Latino-owned business or Black-owned business, other businesses really getting their share of the pie. So this is a system that favors the large over the small and the incumbents over the new entrants. It's got to be disrupted. And what you're beginning to describe, intentionality, purpose, deliberation, how do you disrupt the system, right? So anyone who wants to, because...
It's easy.
Okay, there we go. I mean...
It's easy. I mean, we all teenage companies that are in here share my same frustration. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. And so...
Well, you got one other. I'm sorry.
So what's easy? We have tools in a toolbox. The tools are there, but we don't use them. In the state of Texas, the policy says to all the cities and counties, if there is a best value opportunity, go for it. Go for it. You don't have to do a low bid. And so we have Bexar County, to give you an example. There is a contract for $3,000 and you have the baby, the startup, the teenager, and then the mid-size. And now they're going to go after the $3,000. In the meantime, you have a teenage company that has a cooperative contract. Have you heard of cooperative contracts? Buy board, goodbye, DIRs. Those contracts have been vetted at a national level when you talk about pricing and competitiveness, right? At a national level. So rather than saying, gee, this teenage company or this micro company has a cooperative contract, I'm just going to issue the contract to them instead of wasting all this money soliciting for $3,000. That's one answer. The other answer is Texas has a local preference, 3%. We're saying bump it up to 15%, 15%. Because you know what that does? What that will do is that it's going to allow that teenager, this is the mindset I want everybody today to walk away. If we can all walk away with this concept, it'll happen. Right now, the teenagers want to compete with the big boys. We're not being deliberate in saying, gee, we got Midwheels that is located in a poor, high crime district. They're doing fantastic. Let's be deliberate. How can we move them up? And that's where we can start creating that change. Taking the teenage companies, identifying who they are, solicit the contracts in a manner that levels the playing field, not low bid, best value, high profile, cooperative contracts. And then now that company can compete against the big company and the dollars stay local.
So comments on this, I mean, because these are just really practical ways. I mean, I love the local preference because you're basically saying to the procurement entities and local governments and state government, if you basically buy from a local company, I mean, it's going to reverberate right through your whole system. This is the way you build wealth, not just for one company, but for the entire community.
Yeah. In Miami-Dade and Broward, there is some really significant policy in place for local preference. Miami-Dade, it's stringent, so much so that it can almost limit opportunities for a business that can work across the county lines. With that being said, it would be great if there was a continuum of different businesses that we could be able to be deliberate in our strategies for teenage companies and the micro businesses. But in Miami-Dade and Broward, there's not a lot of teenage companies. There's an environment where we're speaking about micro businesses, businesses that have 2 or 3 employees and trying to be able to scaffold those opportunities. And then there's large Latino-owned businesses that are established and leading the community in Miami-Dade and Broward, economically speaking. And so a lot of times we're having to be able to look at the perspective of small businesses, like the micro businesses, to be able to build an economy that can be able to have a transition to teenage businesses. And in being able to think through the way in which, how does that happen? How can we be deliberate in creating opportunities that break up procurement opportunities across anchor institutions? How can we be deliberate in ensuring that there are programs for subcontracting opportunities so that there's experience built? And so I agree with you wholeheartedly about the notion of being able to be deliberate and knowing that there are specific strategies that need to be considered for the different businesses along the continuum.
Other thoughts about, because you're talking about intentionality at multiple layers here. In a system that generally tends to set some goals and then run away, I suppose. I mean, but this is really fascinating to get to the granularity.
I think, to follow up on what you're saying, it is about intentionality, but it's about simplicity also. Think about it. What we have in common is we're talking about business. In business, if it gets distilled to simplicity, you have a shot at actually getting it done, and then breaking it down into 3 critical goals, let's say. We have to even have, at a very basic level, the same taxonomy, which is, are we all speaking the same way about these businesses, right? Because when the federal government, state or local, talks about small or micro or whatever, it's different. So we're not all talking about the same thing. So I would recommend in this playbook that's being proposed that we have a taxonomy about, we're talking about micro, what does that mean? Small, mid-size, large, and truly global companies. Because, to your point, and you will know this well, if I'm having a conversation with the folks at Mastech, right? Very large player in your market, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company that is diverse owned, certified, and the conversation about how do we go global. Very different than the conversation Jane and I were having behind stage. And we're saying like, well, you know, have you thought about using VR, augmented reality, to augment your defibrillators so that when a person goes to reach for a defibrillator, they have this virtual reality, teaches them how to use it, right? Think about it. That way she can add more value to the overall solution and glean back more income. That's the way that I work. My model is, let's have that conversation. Let me know where you are on that continuum. What do you need? Do you need access to capital? What type of capital? All capital is not good. Is it debt capital? Is it equity capital? Is it a blend of it? You know, let's have that conversation. Technology, the use of technology. A lot of our Latinos are yet not on a digital literacy roadmap. We need to get them there. Why? Because think about how many nail salons, haircutting places, not that I use them much, but right, during the pandemic, right? If you know that your favorite, you know, your favorite taqueria was still open and the hours that it was open or that it was doing delivery, but what did they have needed? A digital tether, at least your email, at least your social media coordinates. It would have been a game changer. So where do they get on, even at the basic layer of digital literacy and engagement and having a tether, right? On the other side, it's elegant procurement, right? You want to procure with some of the largest corporations in the world, great, I can train you to do that, but there's a protocol and there's a way to go about it. Federal government, federal, state, local education is completely different. Which sandbox do you wish to play in? You know, it's fluid. So what I'm saying is we need to get real basic on, okay, we all want to help, but let's all look at it the same way so that now if I'm meeting with Ramiro and saying, the initiative that we're going to do with Coke, can we do it around mid-sized business? He might say, yeah, it aligns well to these programs. Or he might say, hey, Fernando, tweak it down to here. Okay, then we're goal aligned.
Right.
And we can better support each other. And these are the notions in my mind.
Yeah, this is really quite helpful. You've created a little bit more work for us, by the way, but it's okay. But here's a question from the audience, and if other folks have questions, get ready. So, and this really gets to some of this intentionality, and I think the political discourse around goal setting. So San Antonio, coming back to the playbook, 64% of the population is Latino. And then the question is, well, why did the agencies only set low goals on contracts, right? And the second question is, if the U.S. writ large has X number of Latino-owned businesses, why do we also tend to set low goals? So this is a question of, are we taking the starting point of Latino-owned businesses, which tend to be fairly concentrated in the construction sector and business-to-consumer sectors, or are we really being aspirational, almost generational in the time of change we want to set forward? So, what are some thoughts about goal setting? And how
I want to thank Dominica for bringing us together in the cohort cities because, and she has said this before, and I agree, we want to create a national economic development strategy that supports our Latino and Latino-owned businesses. But you've got to do that together. I know people say we each stand strong, but we stand better if we stand together as a community of 62 million plus Latinos. Our GDP is $2.8 trillion, fifth largest economy in the world if we were our own country. And boy, what a country that would be. And but at the same time, I want to commend, getting back to the playbook, I mean, we have a playbook. This president has set a goal of 15% for every department. It's the first time we have a goal. Now we need to reach that goal. And we're 18.9% of the population. We over-index in construction and even in information security, in retail and trucking and development and production. And so I know the McKinsey and Company study pointed out that we over-index in job creation and company creation. Latinos are creating companies at 6 times the national rate. Latinos 3 times the national rate. Latinos own businesses at a higher rate than non-Latinos. 1 out of every 200 as opposed to 1 out of every 300 for non-Latinos. But what we need is to have people that are champions at the state level, community, city level, the utilities, water companies. All of these entities need to have champions that believe that there's a good economic cycle to put those dollars back into the community that you're depending on. This is not corporate social responsibility anymore. There are 3 reasons why we need to do this. We are the consumers of the future and the present. We are the workforce of the future. More than 60% of the jobs that have been filled in this country in the last 10 or 15 years have been Latinos. And we're the vendors of the future. We now have access to capital. We can scale because we are getting capacity building through a lot of partners that are here. The missing piece is we just want more damn business. But the standards are set to help the incumbents and the larger companies. And that's the cycle we need to break. So I appreciate champions like Lisa and Fernando, and of course, Janie. We need people to talk that playbook. And we did it in San Antonio with Toyota. When we brought Toyota to town, we created a full supply chain, and we told Toyota, you want incentives, tax abatements? We said, great, thank you for bringing those 4,000 jobs, but you have 17 suppliers. None of them are woman-owned or Hispanic-owned. Today we have 7+ because we said we want to match them up through a joint venture and make the Latino and the Latina 51% owners. Well, we can't do that. Yes, you can. That tech transfer occurs if you're the owner. So I just want to say there is a playbook. It's an Aspen playbook, and it can be accomplished throughout the country.
And if I just may jump in and just to piggyback on that, goal setting is, yes, important by institution, but it's also by community. And if we could be able to create a coalition charged with an expectation of greater goal setting, goal accountability, that's important. And that's what the Health Foundation is doing with the Anchor Alliance. It's bringing together not only the anchor institutions, the technical assistance organizations, the business owners, to being able to say, this is an important goal, and no longer is it about one particular institution that needs to meet those metrics, but how do we hold our whole community accountable and everybody coming out to say where they stand on those metrics. So it's a shift in the way that the conversation can be able to happen too.
And I'd like to throw one little thing onto it, because we're making excellent points here. What I've also observed that really kind of elevates this to a fine area is to be able to be super accountable to impact, right? So how do we do that? Well, gladly, and I can introduce you to the folks at the University of Washington. They've created this black box, it's economic impact matrix, and most of the major corporations that we play with, most of the billion-dollar roundtable members have gone through it. I've gone through it multiple times. I use it as a best practice. And what it does, it says, for every dollar that I spend, guess what? I learn that it creates $1.97 worth of economic impact in the community, right? In your space.
That's right.
For every $1 million, it creates 17 jobs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now I'm being data-driven, right? So now people from the chambers, people from the political side of the house listen to that and say, oh, wow, these are proven models, and it's being validated by academia that if I invest or if I come along, like initiatives like you were describing, Ramiro, there with our friends over at Toyota, that you can have success, but it has to be measured, right? And that accountability. And I think that rounds it off as well.
So we're getting the hook.
Okay.
If anyone has like a one word, could be English, could be Spanish, whatever the word is, but no cursing, we're live, right?
You really triggered my thought, is that by increasing that local, I call it local organic growth. We're going to grow organically, right, from within. We do a great job of recruiting